P.A.I.
I'm here to discuss something today that nobody else is talking about, but it needs to be said. And I'm tired of pretending that it's not a legitimate threat to our society. This might be a bit controversial, but I'm here to raise awareness to the fact that Italians need to be stopped. And it needs to start now, before it's too late. For far too long, we've been living under the guise that Italians are totally normal, healthy, reasonable people born with some sort of innate human dignity and therefore deserving of the basic love and respect that you would give anyone else on earth. Well, we were wrong. The origin of Italianism. First of all, Italians aren't born at all. They're raised. Choosing to be Italian is a cultural phenomenon that formed sometime approximately 19,000 years ago. Yeah. Wake up, people. Why is nobody talking about this yet? Now, they didn't always use that terminology, but ancient forms of Italianism as we know it today started developing with regular people who were living in the Mediterranean area at this time, which eventually became the Roman Empire. Italians then began to infest the Roman Empire like ants, even creating their own sinful and disgraceful country in this area on July 2nd, 1946, where they were free to practice Italianism and even encourage their own innocent, unsuspecting children to become Italian as well. But it didn't stop there. Once land and sea travel had advanced enough, Italianism began to quickly spread all over the world, even into our own little precious United States of America. The most popular hotspot for practicing Italianism in our country is in the state of New Jersey. If at all possible, please do not ever go to New Jersey, or you're putting yourself at a significant risk for exposure to this sinful way of living. So what exactly is Italianism? People who choose to live an Italian lifestyle have many strange and bizarre tendencies that make them clearly stand out from regular people. You'll immediately know one when you see one. People who choose to practice Italianism have an unhealthy fascination, or should I say obsession, with things like pasta, pizza, red wine, fresh herbs, gambling, cheese, bread, espresso, soccer, leather goods, Vespa scooters, and crime. They even made their own secret code language to describe their sinister activities without normal people understanding them. Some words are spelled the same way as they are for everyone else, but have a creepy and twisted pronunciation. For example, marinara, as in marinara sauce, being pronounced as marinara. They have strangely dark rituals too, such as not eating bread at the beginning of a meal, not ever gifting chrysanthemums to loved ones, arriving extremely late to social events, probably in order to commit a crime first, expecting people to bring wine as a sacrifice when you enter their home, kissing people on the cheek when you greet them, only taking their shoes off in private because they're hiding criminal contraband in their shoes. Wake up, people! And rising when elders walk into a room, amongst many other chaotic things. So here's some common warning signs of someone being Italian to watch out for. There's the obvious Italian gang sign that many Italians use to identify and communicate with each other, which kind of leads us into the idea that a lot of Italians are very dramatic with their hands. It's actually a proven fact that Italians are unable to talk with their hands behind their back. They often are also seen removing their hat indoors, visiting homes unannounced, waiting at the table until everyone else is done eating, even if they themselves are finished, waiting until they're done chewing to speak while eating, can you imagine? Wearing leather jackets and chains, this particularly happens on masculine identifying Italians, opening the doors for people that they don't even know, skipping breakfast, insisting that you dine in at a restaurant rather than getting takeout, never sitting with their backs to the door when eating in public, not breaking spaghetti before you cook it, not directly putting money into your hand, but rather laying it on the register. They also always peel their fruits and vegetables, even though the peels are actually known to have the most vitamins, as everybody knows. They often ask permission to enter an occupied room, and they speak really unnecessarily loud, especially in public. That's a big one. If you see anyone exhibiting any of these odd behaviors, report them to P.A.I. immediately for further inspection to determine if they may be practicing Italianism. So what's the real issue? Now that you know what Italians look like, let's talk about why they're so dangerous. Aside from the crime, being Italian is simply immoral, in layman's terms. It's unnatural and it's sinful. If God wanted people to be Italian, he would have made them Italian from the start. But he didn't. It's a made-up propaganda-filled agenda created by sickos to control the rest of society and spread their sinful habits that would tempt us all to fall from grace and join their anarchist revolution against the Lord, the government, humanity as a whole, and Betty White. I know what you're thinking. But Lizzie, people don't choose to be Italian. It's an ethnicity just like being black, white, or anything else. Wrong. That's what they want you to think. Being Italian is just another alternative lifestyle that completely devalues the strong cultural norms that we've built up this far. Now, because all humans are born with sins and temptations, you yourself might be inclined to have some Italian thoughts. You might be lying in bed at night and have a little goblin whisper in your ear.
Mamma mia, avere la botte piena e la moglie ubriaca.
And you can absolutely choose not to participate in these disgusting behaviors. You can have Italian thoughts without letting yourself become Italian. If you feel yourself slipping into Italianism, stop whatever you're doing immediately and eat an entire raw potato to calm the urges. Contact P.A.I. and/or your therapist immediately to discuss further action for combating these urges. But Lizzie, you might say, what's the harm in people doing something you consider sinning if it doesn't affect you at all? Who are you to dictate what's wrong for someone else to do with their own body in the privacy of their own home, or even in public if it isn't causing immediate harm to you or anyone else? You'd be logical to think that without all the facts, but here's why you're dead wrong. Italianism is actually the root of the common conspiracy known as the Illuminati Society. The fact is, all Italians are in the Illuminati and actually run the Illuminati. Their goal is to spread this society's harmful practices, such as undermining corrupt governments and religious oppression, to everyone in the world. It's absolutely disgusting. Many famous people that we know and love were secretly Italian. Ever heard of Michelangelo, the creator of the popular statue of David? He was Italian. Are you surprised? Think about how deeply this symbol has been driven into our culture. We see it on music albums, posters, and even memes. This is just one example of how Italians have imprinted themselves into our brains without us even questioning it. Ever heard of the popular children's game Marco Polo? Italian. Marco Polo was an Italian writer and traveler in the 1200s. That's where this gets serious, when it starts affecting children who don't know any better. They run around playing this game without knowing the dark truth behind it. That Italians are taking over the world slowly, one subliminal message at a time. Still not convinced? You know the popular scientist, artist, engineer, theorist, sculptor, and architect? The one that we all know and love, whose discoveries and intentions were perceived to be a major turning point in society, presumably for the better? Leonardo da Vinci. Did you know that he, too, practiced Italianism? I know it's hard to hear, but stay with me. It actually gets worse. A lot of his art has direct symbols and messages that prove exactly what I'm talking about, that he and the rest of Italians are the Illuminati. Look up the Da Vinci Code if you need more information on this topic. The Illuminati is responsible for so many quote-unquote natural disasters that we've seen, such as diseases like smallpox and polio, which they use to curb the population count, as well as things like world wars, terrorist attacks like 9/11, stock market crashing, forest fires, and even widespread famine. They always have murder on the mind. The Illuminati regularly uses things like time travel, cloning devices, mind control devices, etc. to literally rewrite history and get into positions of power easily. And let's not forget, this is all orchestrated by whom? The Italians. How do we stop this? The solution is to first combat those who are simply weak-minded and tempted by the charms of Italianism to quit their habits by intense conversion therapy, which may include electroshock therapy and even a lobotomy if necessary. For those who are beyond repair, they may need to be permanently institutionalized in solitary confinement where they can't affect anyone else with their twisted beliefs. And for those who are too powerful and pseudo-productive for us to prove that they're unfit for society, the only solution is to begin involuntarily sterilizing Italians one by one at the source. If we can stop the spread of Italianism, we can save all the rest of the regular people from living an unfulfilling life of sin and misery. If you're feeling particularly brave and don't have the power to do any of this yourself, you might even consider dating or even marrying an Italian and refusing to have intercourse with them so that you can stop them from continuing their lineage. If enough of us can stop even one Italian from practicing Italianism, we can eventually stop them all. Warning: Only do this if you are very strong-minded. Do not interact with Italians if you have an addictive personality and are prone to peer pressure. By marrying an Italian, you may be exposed to these absurd rituals by being forced to interact with their Italian families, and you must stay strong and not allow yourself to be convinced in any way, shape, or form that this is going to be a positive experience. Italians may look very happy and full of life just like anyone else, but I promise you, most Italians are miserable, and those who aren't, well, they're the most dangerous. If you see an Italian displaying Italian pride, proceed with extreme caution. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Lizzie, it's impossible that we can generalize an entire group and say that they're all evil and corrupt. There must be at least a few good Italians in society. And to that I'd say, you're right actually. I will admit that there are some respectable people who practice Italianism in extremely light doses and are still very upstanding members of society that can be fully trusted. They're as close to regular people as you can be while being tainted by this plague. This would be the very, very underground, rarely discussed group of Italians, hardly ever seen portrayed in the media, known as the Sicilian Mafia. Those guys are actually pretty cool. You might know more about the Irish mob. They're sort of like that. You can really trust those guys. But anyone else that fits the aforementioned descriptions described to you here today is a dangerous, hardened criminal with bad intentions. So the next time you see someone engaging in Italianism in your neighborhood, do another take. Think twice. Double dip. And stand up for what's right. This has already gotten way out of hand, and the time is now to react before it gets any worse. We can't waste any more time being respectful. We need to fight for change, and we can't do it without your help. At the very least, spread the word. Thank you. This has been a PSA by P.A.I, Pals Against Italians. It's all a dream. Die or wake up.